Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another GameMaker tutorial. Now, in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how you can build an inventory system that stacks, so you can have multiple items in the same slot. I've had a lot of people request this, and my old inventory system video is a little outdated. Maybe not the best way to do it. It's a way to do it, but this way it works better. We're going to be using a data structure. We're going to be using a DS grid. So if you don't know anything about DS grids, I'm pretty sure I have tutorial videos that explain those as well. So you can go check out those. Also, I just wanted to say that my website is up. I'm going to put a link in this video. Go check out my GameMaker book and my GameMaker course on Udemy. Tonight is the Ludum Dare, if you're watching this video the day that it comes out, and I'm going to be doing the Ludum Dare, and I'm going to be live streaming my entire development process. I'm going to be hanging out with my brother, having a good time. So if you guys want to join me on the stream, you can check out my Twitch channel and watch on the stream there, and watch me during the Ludum Dare. But let's get started. So right here, I just ran real quick, and I'm showing This is the inventory system right here that we're going to be making. I've set it up to where if I click in an inventory box, it just creates a random item. But if I click on the item again, it adds to how many items are in that inventory box. If I right click, it removes items from that slot. And there's also a system that allows you to pick up items, which means there's a script that if your character steps on an item, it will automatically put that item in your inventory. And so yeah, let's get started. The first thing you're gonna need is you're going to need a single sprite that each image index is a new item. You can see image 0 is an empty item box. Image 1 is a potion, image 2 is a bomb, and image 3 is a sword. You can have as many images as you want, but we're going to be using these values 0, 1, 2, 3 as the IDs, the ID for each item. So first thing we're going to do is create a new object. We're going to call this inventory. Okay, and in this object, we're going to set up an enumerator, add event, add a create event into the object. Oh, also this object is going to be persistent. We're going to check persistent right here. What that means is the object will be in every single room in our game. It will always be available. And that's important. So we're going to drag over a code from the control panel. And I also should mention that this is a slightly more advanced tutorial. So if you're brand new to GameMaker, good news. Next week I'm coming out with a tutorial video for beginners on building an RPG. So initialize the inventory object. We'll actually leave that, but drag in another one that is create the item enum. So an enumerator is just basically they're kind of global variables that are available everywhere in the game, and they're kind of just like variables. That's kind of what we're creating. So enum item, we're going to have none equals 0, potion equals 1, bomb equals 2, and sword equals 3. And you'll notice that these are exactly the same as these right here. 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. Now if you want to access an enumerator variable, you can just do item dot none. And this right here is equal to 0. That's it. Really simple. Quite simple. So we're going to be accessing them later. Okay, now that we've got our enumerators, and we want to actually make sure that they're created before this other event. Ooh, that's a glitch. Delete. Okay, so we've got create the enum, create the inventory. Let's drag the inventory down below create the enum. So now we've got create the enum right there at the top and initialize the inventory object right here. So let's go into initialize the inventory object. And we're going to have not too much stuff in here at first. Our inventory needs a width. So how many cells wide is it going to be? I'm just going to make mine a width of 4 and a height of 4. That'll be 16 by 16. We'll have 16 inventory slots. Now we want to get each inventory box is going to have a size. So we'll call this box underscore size equals 16. So they have a size. Now we're going to create the DS grids. And we're going to create one for the items. And we're going to create a second one for the count. So like how many items are in that cell. So we're going to have 2 DS grids. One of them is going to contain what type of item, and the other one's going to contain how many of that item. So we're going to call this one item count. So let's create our first one. We're going to do box. So this one's going to be called box equals DS grid create. Create. There. A width of width and a height of height. Right? Now we're going to want to clear this grid and set all the values to 0. So DS grid clear. And we're going to do grid box. And the value that we're going to set them all to is item.none. So we're setting the grid to have no items in it, in the entire thing. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger here. Okay, looking good. Now let's create our count. Count equals DS grid create width height. Now DS grid clear count, and we can just set this one to 0 because they're all going to start out with no items. So our DS grid count is set to 0. Great. We're done with that part. Now we can move on to the next part. So what we need to do now is we need to create a couple scripts. And we're going to have, let's just start. We'll start creating the scripts and I'll explain them as we go. We're going to have one called script pickup item. Well, let's write add item first. We'll call this one script. Well, I'm just going to call it add inventory. Inventory add item. Inventory add item. And we're gonna pass into this. If we want to add an item to our inventory, we want to pass in the coordinate that we want to add it in. So if we've got 16 slots, maybe we want to add it at coordinate 3, 3, which will be the very bottom right corner. Since it starts at 0, 0, 0 would be the top left-hand corner, and I'm not sure which. Probably this side is left-hand for you guys. Since it's mirrored. So we're going to pass in an X value and a Y value, and then we also want to pass in the item that we're going to be adding to this slot. Okay, so we're going to create these arguments that we're passing in var xx equals argument 0. And the reason we can't use x is because x is already a built-in variable. Var yy equals argument 1. Var add item equals argument 2. There we go. So we've created those, and I should probably actually bring this up. Now we want to check to make sure that we're inside the range of, well, yeah, we want to check to make sure that we're inside the range of our grid. And the way we can do that is we can do if xx does not equal median 0 xx inventory dot width. I think that works. Inventory dot width minus 1. I think we have to minus 1 from that. We'll check. We'll find out here in a second, I guess. or yy does not equal median 0 yy inventory dot height minus 1. And that looks good. So what that does is it says, well, this value gets the median of these three values. So if x is equal to -1 here, it's going to return 0. And so we're not going to be inside of this range. If x is equal to 7, which is way more than our width minus 1, then it's going to return this, which is way outside the range. But if x is equal to 0, right, it's going to return, this is going to be equal. X is going to be equal to whatever this returns. So this is an easy way that we can check to see if it's inside that range. And if it isn't inside the range, which is what we're checking for, show debug message that x and y are outside of the range. And we're just showing this debug message so that we can see, if we're watching our debug messages down at the bottom when we're running the game, we can see that there's something going wrong here, and then we're going to exit. Okay, so check for out of range. Now, if that's just some error detection there, what we need to do now is actually check to see if we are inside the range, how many items are already in that box. Because if there's already an item in that box, then we can't add another one to it unless it's the same type of the item that we're adding. So we need to check that. So get the item count. So var item count equals inventory dot box xxyy. So we're using what's called an accessor right here. You may have heard me talk about them before, but this accessor is what allows us to access this specific inventory box inside of our inventory grid. So we're passing in our x and y values to select a specific inventory box, and we're finding out, except we don't want to do inventory box, we want to do inventory count, because we're trying to find out how many are there. So if item count is equal to 0, that means it's an empty inventory box. What are we going to do in here? Well, we're going to add the item. Okay. Else if item count is greater than 0, what are we going to do? There's already an item here. So we need to check to see if we can add our current item to that slot, right? Else, so if we're not equal to 0 and we're not greater than 0, that means we're less than 0. We want to return an error message here because we should never have an item count less than 0. That would be bad. So we're going to do our item count is less than 0, error. So we're going to do show error, the item count is less than 0. You can make your, and then we're going to do false here. So it doesn't have to abort, your game doesn't have to end. You could make this return the x and y value that's passed in if you want to get really fancy. So now we're going to actually do what we just commented in up here. We're going to actually add the item. So inventory.box xxyy equals add item. Right? So we added the item to that inventory box. Now we're going to add one to the count. One to the count. So inventory box dot count xxyy plus plus. So just doing plus plus is going to add one to the count, how many items are in there. And then lastly, we're going to return. And oh yeah, we need to return down here. Well, we'll worry about that in a second. So we're going to return back out, and we're going to return either true or false based on if we were able to add the item. So we're going to return true because we were able to add the item. Now let's check down here in our next case. Are these items the same? So if inventory item inventory.box xxyy is equal to add item, well then that's going to be easy. We can just add to count. Add one to count, right? Which is what we did exactly right up here. So we're just going to copy this and paste this down. And then we're going to return true. Return true. Else, if we can't add an item there, like if these two are not equal, then we're just going to return false. And you could actually show a debug message. Show debug message. There is already an item there. Okay, we're looking good. Looking good. So we've created our inventory add item. And it looks really good. So let's add in a new function. And this one's going to be called inventory, or a new script. We're going to call this one inventory remove item. Inventory remove item. This one is just going to take in an X and a Y value. We don't actually have to tell it what kind of item is there because the script can just say, oh, well, this is the kind of item there when it goes to that location in the grid. So inventory remove item. We're going to pass in an X and a Y, and that's it. Var XX equals argument 0. Var YY equals argument 1. And let's, I'm going to open my example one up here so we can look at it. So we're actually going to copy and paste the same out of range error here. Check for out of range. I'm just going to copy this this section right here and the add item into the remove item. Because we want to check, we want to see if we're outside the range of the item box in this one as well. In fact, we're going to do a lot of the same things. We can copy get the item count because we want to make sure that we know how many items are there. And we'll stop copying there, although I feel like there's more that we could use. But so make sure we have items. So if item count is equal to, is greater than 0. So we're removing an item. We want to make sure that it's greater than 0. Else, if item count equals 0, we're kind of reversing this. Else, but the last thing we're going to do is we're also going to error here. So we can do error, show error, and we can say, what did we say in the last one? I don't remember what we said. Let's copy it. Inventory add item, show error. The item count is less than 0. So here we go. Item count is less than 0. So if we've got If the item count is greater than 0, we need to subtract 1 from the item count. So we're going to do inventory.count. Let's see. Take 1 from the item count. Inventory.count xxyy minus minus. So that's going to subtract 1 from the item count. Now, if our item is actually at 1 item left and we subtract it, it's now going to be 0. We need to actually remove the item from the item box as well. So we're going to do check for last item, which we can do if item count equals 1, right? If our item count is 1, then, and since item count right here was saved clear up here, it's still going to be equal to 1, even though we subtracted it here. We can't use this unless we say this right here is equal to 0. You could do that as well, but there's no reason to use the accessor again. We can just use the variable that we created, item count. So if item count is equal to 1, then inventory.box, we need to set the item to empty. Set item box to empty. Inventory item dot box, or inventory dot box xxyy equals item dot none. We're setting it to none. Remove item. Okay, and then we want to return the item that we removed, just in case when you're programming your game, if you want to do something with it, like if you remove the item and you actually want to drop the item on the ground or whatever you want to do, we're going to return the item removed. Return item removed. So we're going to do return. So we need to actually get access to it first. We need to get access to the return item. So let's do that before, right inside of here. I guess we only need to, no, let's do it up here. So we're going to get access to the item we're removing. Get access to remove item. Var remove, remove item equals inventory dot box xxyy. We need to get access to it before we remove it right here, before we set it to none, obviously. And then we can return remove item. Now, if the item count is already equal to 0, then there's not an item to remove, so we can just return none. Return none. Item dot none. Okay? We could show an error message too, or debug message. Show debug message. There was not an item at that location. Okay? So there we go. We've got a way to remove items now. Now, we also want a way to, the add item, we have to, it's like we're clicking on that location to add an item to that location. We also want a pickup item. And this script is just going to have the player walks over the potion item and picks it up. This script is going to automatically add the potion item to the inventory in the correct location. So we're going to create that script right now. Create a new script, and we're going to call this one inventory pickup item. So this one's going to be a little bit different from the add item because we're just picking it up from the ground and adding it to the inventory. Inventory pickup item. And this we're just going to pass in the item. That's it. What item did we pick up? So var add item equals argument 0. And then in this one, what we need to do is the first thing we need to do is check for item in inventory. Because the item might already be somewhere in our inventory, and if it is, we just want to add it to the stack. Stack it on. For var xx equals 0, yy equals, or yy is less than inventory dot width. No, sorry. X is less than inventory dot width and xx plus plus. Okay, great. Now on the outside of this one, so we can actually select this and press tab to tab it all over, we need to do on the outside of this, we're going to do another for loop. For var yy equals 0, yy is less than inventory dot height, yy plus plus. There you go. This should loop through every single spot in our inventory. We're going to do if inventory.box xxyy is equal to add item. Basically, did we find one that's already in our inventory? Inventory.count xxyy plus plus. Add to the count. If there's already one there, add to the count. Now we need to return true. Return true. Because we were able to find it, we added the item, and we can return back out again. Now copy this whole thing right here, because if there's not already one in there, then we need to create our own. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for the first empty slot. So check for an empty slot. Okay. Let's see. If inventory box equals instead of add item, do item dot none. So if we found an empty one, then we're going to set inventory dot box xxyy equals add item, and inventory.count plus plus, so we'll add to the count as well, we'll return true. If we can't find one, then we want to show a debug message. Show debug message. The inventory is full. Return false. We weren't able to pick up the item because our inventory is full. Awesome, we've got the pickup in. So we've got the three main scripts that we need in order to use our inventory. Now we can actually start using these scripts. So if you go into your create event for the inventory, go into initialize the inventory object, we can add some items. Add and remove some items. So let's use the pickup function first, and we're going to do a repeat. Repeat 5 times inventory pickup item dot potion. We're going to pick up 5 potions right at the start. Then we'll do inventory pickup item dot bomb inventory pickup item dot sword, and then we'll remove an item. Inventory remove item from position 0, 0, which is going to be the potions that we grabbed because they were just added to the very first inventory slot. So we're adding 5 potions, adding 1 bomb, adding a sword, and then removing one potion back out again, or one item from position 0, 0, which happens to be a potion. Now we should be able to create a room. I'm just going to make this 320 by 180. We're going to make it room test. I'm going to give it a view, enable the use of views, visible when room starts. The view in the room is going to be 320 by 180. And the port on the screen is going to be 640 by 360. That's just going to scale it. We're going to go into objects here, and we're going to add the inventory object just right there. And I'm also going to turn off in the windows here, I'm going to turn off interpolate colors between pixels. We'll turn that off. Now we should be able to run this and hopefully not get any error messages. Good, no error messages. So that's good news. But we can't see our inventory yet. Now, we've created these awesome functions and they should work, but we can't really see them. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the different ways that you can represent your inventory on the screen, but I am going to show you guys some of the very basics to hopefully get you on the right track. So the first thing we're going to do is come into our inventory object, and we're going to add a draw event to it. So draw the inventory. Inventory, I think. Hopefully I've been spelling that right. Sometimes I hate typing. Okay, so we need to loop through each item and then draw it out. So for var yy equals 0, yy is less than width, yy plus plus. So we're looping through our inventory again, just like we did before. For var xx equals 0, xx is less than height, xx plus plus, and we're gonna get our location in the room. So var tx, which stands for temporary x position, equals x plus xx times box size. Var ty equals y plus yy times box size. So this is just getting the grid position relative to the actual position in the room. We're converting from a position in the room to a grid position, I think. Now we're going to draw the sprite. Draw sprite items, right? And then because the value of the enum is the same as the image index, we can just draw the value inside of the box as the image index. So box xxyy, just like that. That should draw the correct item. Tx ty. Now we're going to want to draw the count too. If count xxyy is greater than 0, then we're going to draw a circle, color, and we're going to draw at tx ty minus 2. These values are just kind of arbitrary. A radius of 6, c white, false. We're going to draw the actual draw text tx minus 1. We're going to draw the actual number ty minus 8. Count xxyy. There we go. And for good measure, I'm going to create a font, and we'll just call this font text. Oops. Text. And we're going to turn off anti-aliasing, turn off high quality, and set the size to 8, apparently. set the size to 8. Technically, if you're really wanting to save some space, you could change this so that it only does numbers, because that's all we're going to need. But okay, so we've created font text. Go into the inventory in the create event and do draw set font text. There we go. Okay, now it should be drawing our inventory boxes. Should be drawing the boxes. It should be drawing the entire inventory. So hopefully, and that looks good. We added 5 potions, removed 1, and then we added a bomb and a sword. And that's exactly how it should work. Let's add in a little bit more now. We're just going to take it just a little bit further to help show you guys what you can do now that you just have these 3 functions that you can use to work with your inventory. So we're going to write 2 new scripts. The first one's going to be called x2gx. x2gx. We'll pass in an x coordinate. So this is going to convert an x coordinate in the room, anywhere in the room, to a grid coordinate in our grid. And it's nice to create this function. I love creating these little functions because this is something that I find myself doing a lot when I have a grid like this, is trying to convert from the grid to the room or from the room to the grid. And so just creating a function for it makes it super easy. Var xx equals argument 0. If xx is less than inventory.x, return -1. Basically that means if our x position that we clicked on, or the x position we're passing in, is less than the inventory's x position in the room, wherever we're drawing the inventory, then we're outside of the inventory. We want to return a -1, which will be outside the bounds of the inventory. So we can do, but if we're not, then we want to return the actual inventory value. Return xx minus inventory dot x div inventory dot box size. Sweet, that should work. Now we can duplicate this one and call it y to GUI. Y to GUI, pass in a y. This should be YY and Y and Y there. Okay. Sweet. We've got these cool little scripts that we can use now. We're going to open up the inventory and we're going to add in a new, not change. We're going to add in a new mouse, global left pressed event. Drag over a code here. Add a random item to the inventory. Var gx equals x to gx mouse x. So we're converting the mouse's x position to a grid x position. Var gy equals y to, I love these, mouse. It's so useful. If count gx gy is greater than 0. I'm in the wrong one. Whoops. Left pressed. Here we go. This is more like it. If count equals 0, then we're going to inventory add item gx gy add item. Okay, but we haven't created the add item variable yet, so var add item equals choose item dot potion item dot bomb. Ooh, almost knocked my mouse off. Item dot sword. So there we're just choosing a random one of these 3 items to add. So if it's not equal to 0, else count gx gy plus plus. So if there's already an item there, then we're just going to add to the number of items that's there. But if there's not an item there, then we're going to add a random item there. Works pretty cool. Now we're going to right click on that event and we're going to duplicate the event, and we're going to do mouse, global right pressed. And inside of here you can remove the add item thing. You can remove the bottom part of this if statement. You can put this back to greater than 0, and if it is greater than 0, then we'll just remove the item. Inventory, remove item at position GX, GY. That should handle everything for us. So let's run this. Hopefully this all works. It's been a lot of programming and a lot to do. So we should be able to add. Those are outside the range. Good. If we click outside the range, we should be able to add items into our inventory. And then if we right click, it should remove them. And looks like everything works here. So it looks like we did everything right. So the adding an item function is useful if you have a drag and drop interface where you're dragging items around, you drop one, you can call the add an item on that location and add the item to the list. The pick up an item is useful if your character's outside the game walking around and there's an item and they walk over it, you can call the pick up an item and it will automatically add it to your inventories and you don't have to actually drag it and drop it into the inventory. So there you guys go. This is a really basic inventory system that I think is pretty clear and straightforward, especially once you get these scripts written, then it's super easy to use in your game. Like you can just call, add inventory item, and then you pass in a position and the item you want to add. And so it's really quite simple to use. Hopefully you guys found this video useful and you learned something from it. If you did, be sure and share it on Twitter and Facebook and wherever, because that really helps me when you guys share my videos on Twitter. Give it a thumbs up, give it a comment down in the bottom, and like I said, Ludum Dare tonight. I'm really excited about it. If you guys want to join me, check out my Twitch channel and follow me there, and I will talk to you guys later.